All right. So we've talked a lot about the nervous system, about the structure of the brain, about how nerves transfer signals, and all that kind of great stuff. What we're going to do now is I'm actually going to tell you what actually physically is happening in your brain when you learn something new. Okay, so we're going to deal with that. First of all learning is you have about a 11 bajillion neurons inside of your brain. Okay, and they're all interconnected. Okay, and they're interconnected by the dendrites of one cell being in contact with the axons from another cell. Okay, and the signals are going from this nerve through the axon to cross the synapse to this nerve in the dendrites, and all that is going on. And you've got all these interconnections. Figure that if you imagine a nerve cell in your brain looking something like a big, huge, ginormous tree, okay, where all of the different twigs themselves are little tiny dendrites that are connecting up with the axon. The roots of that tree are the axons, and they're just crazy numerous. They're all over the place, okay? Every time you learn something, what's happening is your cells are actually growing a new dendrite that's connecting up with a new nerve that's creating a new pathway, okay? Imagine for a minute that your brain is this open grassy field, okay? And you're born and it's this beautiful grassy field. And as soon as someone says your name, hello, Bob, it's like someone walked through the grass and pushed the grass down. Well, within an hour, all that grass is standing back up again, and you don't know who Bob is. That's crazy. But then later on, they go, oh, look at cute little Bob, and walk on that path again, hitting those same neurons. Well, eventually, all that grass dies, and that becomes a path. And that now is something permanent. As you get older and older, and people keep calling you Bob, hopefully that's your name. If they're calling you Bob, it's not your name. That'd be really weird. Probably shouldn't answer them. They don't know who you are. Anyway, so they're walking along. Hey, Bob, how are you, Bob? How was school, Bob? Hi, Bob. What was your grade, Bob? How'd you do on the test, Bob? Here, catch the ball, Bob. Okay, all that time saying Bob, it's like you take that grassy path, you've worn it flat into a dirt path, then you've paved it, you've turned it into a super highway. It's easy to find, it's easy to get on, easy to get off. You're probably never going to forget it in your entire life. Okay, that's the idea of learning. Okay. Why? Because you heard something initially and the grass was pushed down, and within an hour the grass was back up and you have no idea what was going on. But the more you got those nerves fired, because people kept calling you Bob, the more you connected it, and it created a permanent neural pathway in your brain. And that's how we create permanent learning, permanent memories, permanent things. Okay, so really all learning is it's the cells in your brain growing dendrites and making connections with other nerve cells. All right, every time you learn something new, like this video right here, you're making new dendrites connect with new cells to create new neural pathways. Now, dendrites are exceedingly fragile. They're not going to last very long. Okay, so you have to do things that will cause you to reinforce those dendrites. Remember, you walk across the grass lays down, that grass is going to stand back up in an hour, and there's no path there at all. So you have to do things repetitively on that path in order to get that grass to stay down so the path exists. If you've ever wondered why in math class they give you those problem sets for homework, I got to do all these problems. It's like, this is so stupid. It's like the same I've done the same problem with different numbers like 18 times. I've had to do 18 problems and it's all the same problem, just using different numbers. Why is that going on? Okay. The reason is because the math person wants you to reinforce that pathway by smushing down that grass so that the grass doesn't stand up, so that you don't forget what it is you're supposed to do. Because later on, when math gets really hard, you're going to want the easy stuff easy. All right? And that's why you do those multiple problems. Okay? All right? And that's the idea. So, by reinforcing that stuff, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to retain by simply practicing, even within just 24 hours of when you first learn something, by practicing that something within those 24 hours, by doing your math problems, by trying to recite that thing you're supposed to memorize, whatever it is you're supposed to do, right? If you do it within 24 hours, odds are you're going to retain about 80% of that thing you learned. Whenever you learn something new and you've taken notes on it, like this video, all right, you want to review those notes soon. You want to review them if you can within the first couple of hours, and then review them again maybe before you go to bed. Go through those notes again, and that way you'll retain about 80% of the stuff that you've learned. Okay? If you do no review, if you just listen to something and let it go and do no review, odds are within 24 hours you're only going to retain about 30% of what it is. So how do we reinforce those neural pathways, those dendrites, to strengthen them? Okay? Or what's actually happening? The more we do something, the more we practice something, right? How are we actually enforcing? What's actually physically happening to those dendrites? First thing is that that dendrite or that axon is connecting up, the dendrites and things are connecting up with the other cells. Where that synapse is, where that connection point occurs, normally it's really tiny. But the more you run down that neural pathway, the more that connection point widens. It gets thicker. It gets broader. Because it gets broader, it's able to contain more and more and more neurotransmitters. So there's a ton of neurotransmitters that can now travel across that synapse and get that next nerve to fire. Okay? So you have bunches and bunches of those neurotransmitters because the connection point is really wide. You can sometimes even get 2 or 3 connection points for the same thought. So you have multiple connection points that are all wide with lots and lots of neurotransmitters. You can then come in and you can put in myelin sheaths. You can reinforce and insulate those nerves to strengthen them and make that signal travel even faster. All of these things are physical things that are happening when you are practicing something over and over again and working on it. So, what are some keys as you're trying to learn things, as you're trying to study? First thing is this, right? When you listen and watch someone teach something, like right now you're listening to me and you're watching me teach you about how learning works. If all you do is listen and watch, you will grow dendrites for, guess what? Listening and watching, not actually doing it, okay? So now that I've told you these things, how do you actually grow dendrites for practicing learning? Well, you have to go and practice learning something, okay? If you listen and watch a math teacher tell you how to do a certain equation, okay, you're growing dendrites for listening and watching math, okay? By doing the exercises in the book and by doing the problem sets for homework, you'll actually grow dendrites for doing the math problem, okay? Those of you that are athletes will understand this, all right? Let me just take soccer, for instance, okay? To properly kick a soccer ball, you can't just read about it or watch a video on it or listen to someone tell you how to do it. Until you actually go out there and practice kicking the ball, you're not going to grow the dendrites necessary for kicking the ball. Okay, this is why whenever you want to get your license and go driving somewhere, you can't just read the book and say, I've read the book, give me my license. Because you've grown dendrites for reading the book about driving. You haven't grown any dendrites for actually driving. That's why they make you sit in a car with an adult driver, an experienced driver, for a year, practicing, because you have to grow dendrites for actually driving, not just reading about driving. And that's the difference. That's why we do that. So, listening and watching is not enough. You actually have to do the thing that you're listening and watching. Okay? You have to get proper rest. Yes, you have to sleep. All right? Those of you that think, oh yeah, I only have to sleep like 4 hours a day. That's all I got. Because I'm like a night person, you know. So I can stay up till like 1 o'clock in the morning and I can get up 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm okay. No, you're really not, okay? If you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep a night, if you do that for a couple of weeks, okay, it will be like you have been awake for 24 straight hours, okay, or worse. That's the level you're functioning on. You've got to rest. This is also why. If you sleep, when your body goes to sleep, guess what your brain is doing? It's going through everything that you learned and saw and tasted and smelled and touched that day. And it's going, that's not important. That's not important. This is important. We'll save that one. That's not important. That's not important. This is important. We'll save that one. That's not important. And it's filtering out all the good stuff and getting rid of all the bad stuff. All the memories you don't need, let's just push them aside. We don't need that. Let's reinforce all the good stuff. How does your brain know what is good? That's easy. It recognizes what is good based on how much time you spent doing that thing. So if you rush through your math problems as quick as you can and then go and spend 4 hours on video games, your brain, when you go to sleep, is going to toss out those math problems and it's going to reinforce the video games. Wrong. Bad. Not that video games are bad, but you need to reinforce the math problems. Okay? That's the idea. So you've got to focus and spend time, concentrated time, focused time on that particular thing. Whenever you are studying, it's good not to have other distractions or music around you, because if you're putting in a certain mathematical equation, or you're putting in a certain historical fact, or putting in a certain character development issue in a piece of literature, and you're trying to get that into your brain so that you can know it, and you're listening to music, well, your brain very likely is going to be merging the music with what you're trying to learn at the same time. So when you go to get it out on the test, if the music's not playing, then information is kind of stuck. Okay? So you want to, while you're studying, have it quiet and calm. Have the music off. Why? Have the phones off. Have the TV off. Have the internet off. Have the emails off. Have all that off. Why? So that you can focus and the memories that you're trying to reinforce are not tied in with other information flowing at the same time. You cannot multitask. Multitasking is a myth. Your brain can do one thing at a time. You might be really efficient at switching from one thing to the other and back to this and back to that and back to this and back to that. But for the brain, it is exceedingly inefficient. And you're not giving yourself the best chance of learning the material. The last one, and you guys are going to love this one. The last one. Let me ask you a question. If I tell you a joke, okay, and you find that joke funny and you laugh, odds are you're going to be able to remember that joke. I told you one time, I've spoken it once, and you go, oh, I remember that joke, it's really awesome. All right, and you get to get up there and you get to tell that joke again. It's really great. You memorized it. You learned it after hearing it one time. Why? Because whenever you have a math teacher stand up and go, the Battle of Hastings was critical for William the Conqueror to take over England. It happened in 1066. Okay, you're probably not going to remember that the first time you hear it. Why? What's the difference? One, or the main difference is simply this, right? When someone's telling you a joke, you are laughing. When someone's standing up pumping you with information, odds are you're stressing over making sure you're not missing any information, so you actually have adrenaline flowing in your body. When you're laughing, you have endorphins flowing in your body. Adrenaline is the fight or flight. Freeze, fight, or flight. All right? Oh no, I'm panicking, I'm freezing. I go brain freeze. I can't see I go blank on the test. I'm actually looking, I'm on the test, and I'm seeing my notes, and there's the answer to, it's right there in my notes, and I can't see it. It's all fuzzy because I have to write it out on my notes and or on the test, and and you start panicking. All right? You have test anxiety. That produces adrenaline. Adrenaline blocks neurotransmitters. Okay? And it interferes with your ability to learn things. So when you're stressed, or when you approach school like, oh man, well, this really sucks. I hate school. I want to be doing something else. I don't care what it is. I want to go brush my dog. My dog needs brushing. I would rather do that, than sit here and read this. Okay? If that's your attitude towards school, you're actually making it harder for yourself to learn and do well. You want the happy hormones. You don't want the stressful hormones, adrenaline. You want the happy hormones, endorphin. You want to laugh. You want to be excited. You want to be looking forward to it as much as it can. Generate whatever you can inside of you to be excited about school. Because if you can do that, your ability to retain information is going to be exponentially greater. And that's a good thing. And that, my friends, is how your brain learns. You learn by growing new dendrites, connecting up, making new neural pathways. Those pathways are fragile at first. They get reinforced by usage. Once you've used them a lot and used them a lot and used them a lot, you're reinforcing them. Then when you go to sleep, your brain then processes the good stuff. It recognizes the good stuff and reinforces it based on the amount of time you spent doing it and thinking about it that day, right? You grow those dendrites for what you've done, not just what you've listened for. If you're listening to something, you're growing dendrites for listening to something. So you want to do the things that you're listening about in order to put them into practice. And the last thing is always approach school with a positive, upbeat, excited attitude, excited about learning, excited about getting some new stuff, some new tools in the toolbox to get you ready for the life that God has for you. Because if you'll do it, approach school that way, it will make schooling so much easier for you.